Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are kind of taking a break from the recent boon of draft videos that I've been cranking out, and today we are talking about 8 of the free agents that, in my opinion, are most overrated and seem most likely to be overpaid. This can be any range of guys that have injury concerns to people that are just being overvalued for their current talents. However, before we start talking about these guys, I want to give you a reminder to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We have been having consistent content talking about everything that has to do with the NBA offseason, whether it's free agency, trades, the draft. And if you are a fan of basketball, I guarantee you'll enjoy these videos. So do me a favor and subscribe. It'll help me out with my YouTube channel, and it'll help you out because you'll get to learn lots about basketball, and that's the game we all love, so why not? Without further ado, let's get to some of these overrated free agents. I have 8 of them, and I will be ranking them in ascending order. So we'll start with the player, in my opinion, who is the least overrated, and that is Montrezl Harrell, who is a big man who played for the Clippers this past season. I have him so low on this list because I think a lot of teams are already going to be paying him significantly less than they probably would have prior to his playoff struggles, but I still think that he is still probably going to receive more money than he should. I would be very cautious about giving Montrezl Harrell anything more than the mid-level, and I still think that there's a chance that a team pays him $14 to $16 million annually. I just have questions about him on both ends of the floor. He really can't shoot, which means that he's going to take a lot away from your spacing on offense, which is very important in the NBA right now. And really, his only offensive value is in the pick and roll. He's great in the pick and roll, and he's one of the better rim runners. He finishes the ball well, but on offense, he's not doing much outside of that. He can't really create his own shot unless it's in that kind of motion. He's not a good playmaker for his teammates. He does do the energy stuff at a high level, and he's exciting to watch play, and he brings that just energy and pumps up his team, but I don't think that that is valuable enough to offset his offensive struggles, and that's without even talking about the end of the floor where he is even worse, which is defense, where he's got the double whammy of being undersized and immobile. As a center in the NBA, you either have to be a rim protector or you have to be able to switch out on the perimeter. And Harrell does not do a great job of doing either of those. So he really just doesn't have a lot of value, in my opinion. He's great in the pick and roll, like I said, and for that reason, I would not be shy from giving him the mid-level, because if you have a solid playmaking guard off the bench, maybe someone like a Jordan Clarkson, that type of player, if you can pair him, well, we saw with Lou Williams this past year. If you can pair a good playmaking, good scoring guard off the bench with Montrezl Harrell, he can be very effective. But outside of that, I don't think that he is as highly valued of a player as a lot of people view him to be, and I would be very cautious if I were a team trying to lure him away from the Clippers if I were giving him much more than $10 to $12 million per year. At number 7, the 7th most overrated free agent in this year's class, in my opinion, I have Bryn Forbes, who is a shooting guard from the Spurs. He's one of the smallest shooting guards in the NBA, only 6'2". He's not athletic at all, which leads him to struggle quite a bit on the defensive end of the floor. He also can't really create his own shot. He's pretty much just a spot up, and at times off of movement 3-point shooter. But outside of that, I don't think that there's a whole lot of value, and I've heard people talking about him getting the mid-level or the taxpayer mid-level, and I just don't think that he's worth that much. I would value him much closer to the minimum than I would anything up in that $5 to $10 million range. And I've heard people talk about him being a potential impact free agent as someone you can bring in, but personally, I just don't see it with Bryn Forbes, and I think that he is one of the more overrated guys in this free agent class. The guy I have is the 6th most overrated free agent, and this is a guy that I honestly could have quite a bit higher on this list. And now that I think about it, I probably should have quite a bit higher on this list, considering what some people are valuing him at. But It's Tristan Thompson, who was a big man for the Cleveland Cavaliers this past season. Tristan is a very good rebounder, similar to his teammate Andre Drummond in that way, but outside of that, doesn't have a whole lot of value. He has an overrated impact on the defensive end of the floor, where he really just doesn't have as high of an impact as you would like to see. His rim protection numbers have gone up in the past year, and I think that that's probably where he's best off if you can have him in a scheme where he's playing in the drop coverage. But he's very immobile and can't really guard on the perimeter at all, so he would have to be on a team that's running a drop coverage type scheme. He's also very ineffective on offense, doesn't shoot shots outside the paint, and isn't even that effective on those shots within the paint. He's very turnover prone, and I just don't think that he is worth the taxpayer to mid-level exception that some people are valuing him at. I think, once again, similar to Bryn Forbes, he's someone that I would be most comfortable if I were paying him the minimum. And for that reason, I think that he's one of the more overrated and overvalued players in this year's free agency class. At 5, I have a guy that I actually, now that I think about it, should probably have much lower on this list. It's Goran Dragic. I think that people are valuing him much higher than they should. I think that giving him more than $12 million on a multi-year deal would be a mistake. I'd be comfortable giving him $12 to $15 million on a one-year deal, and I think that that's probably the most likely scenario, that he will return to the Heat on something like a $15 million deal. But due to his age and injury concerns, I would not want to give him any more than that, or that amount of money on a multi-year deal, because I just have too many questions about how effective he's going to be as he continues to age. And I also have the questions about if he can stay healthy, but we did see in the playoffs that he can be a very effective secondary ball handler, secondary playmaker, secondary scorer for you, playing off of a big wing in Jimmy Butler, who is one of the 10 best players in the NBA. So I think that he would be very valuable to a lot of teams. The Clippers stand out as a team that would be perfect for him, as well as the Lakers, but it's going to take probably a multi-year deal paying him at that $15 million mark to lure him away from the large one-year payday that he's likely to receive from the Heat. So for that reason, I think that he will most likely stick around in Miami. The 4th most overrated free agent, in my opinion, in this upcoming class is Aron Baynes. Baynes is a guy that people are talking about getting like the full mid-level, and I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. I get that he's a fan favorite and a lot of people like him, but he's unimpactful on the offensive end. I mean, he shot the ball okay with that weird push shot that he has, but I have questions about if he'll even be able to hit that okay mark again. I think he might just end up being a guy that is not very good from there, and I think that this one season might have been a flash in the pan for him as a three-point shooter. Outside of that, he's not doing too much for you on offense, and on defense, he's a big minus. He fouls frequently, he's immobile and cannot guard on the perimeter, and he's also a poor rebounder. So you're not getting much from him aside from maybe like a floor spacing big, but even that is a bit overrated for him in my opinion. And once again, this is a guy that I value at the minimum, not at a mid-level or taxpayer mid-level exception that people have been talking about him getting. Maybe he could get like a biannual from the Suns if they're interested in keeping him around to play the backup center role, but other than that, I would be very cautious about giving him much more than a one-year minimum deal. The 3rd most overrated player in this upcoming free agent class, in my opinion, is Serge Ibaka. I think that Serge is worth the mid-level at most, and probably not even that. I would value him more in like the $6 to $7 million range. I would not be comfortable paying him the full mid-level. And people are saying that he could get like $15 to $18 million annually. That doesn't make any sense to me. Ibaka has his pluses. He's a good offensive big man. He can shoot the ball well and has some positives in the post, but on defense, I really don't think that he makes nearly as large of an impact as he did earlier in his career. He is not nearly the rim protector that he once was. We saw him be the worst of the big guys in the defensive rotation for the Raptors this year, with like a 36-year-old Marc Gasol as the better. So there's lots of questions there. He's also getting up there in years, and I think that we could see his production start to go down. And overall, he really just didn't have that high of an impact on the Raptors winning or losing this season. It felt like every game I looked at the box score, he had a negative plus minus. And while plus minus isn't everything you can go off of, I've also read that by the advanced statistics, the analytics, he really wasn't that impactful of a player this year either. So I think that he is very overvalued, very overrated, and I think that there's a chance that some team really, really overpays for him. I could see like a 1 year deal for $12 to $14 million, but if it's more like multi-years at that level or even higher, I think that it could end up being one of the worst contracts in the entire league, as Serge continues to get older and older. The second most overrated free agent in this year's class, in my opinion, is Malik Beasley, who was a wing for the Timberwolves this past season. People are talking about him like he can be a third best player on this team as a wing who can shoot the ball well and is really good in transition. But guess what? I think that he's a bench player at best. Well, not at best. He could be a fifth starter, but I think his best fit is as like a third or fourth wing on a team where he's coming off the bench and can just space the floor. He's not a good offensive creator for himself or others. He has low assist numbers. He can't do much off the bounce, and most of his abilities to put the ball in the basket is as a three-point shooter and a guy in transition. In the half court, he is not nearly as valuable unless it's spotting up for a shot. I think that his best fit would have been on a team like Denver, so I'm not sure that him forcing his way out of that situation was the best move for him, especially at this point. I don't think that the Timberwolves should even offer him the qualifying offer due to all the questions about his character and his future eligibility. He's like a convicted felon now, I think. He like pointed a gun at his family members or something. That is not good. So I would really pass on Malik Beasley, and due to those reasons, I think that you could really make a case that he's the most overrated player in this free agency class. I'm not sure if people are still considering him to be this type of value, but people are talking about him getting $14 to $16 million annually prior to the news about his charges, legal charges coming out. And after that, if teams are still willing to pay him in that range, I think it would be a huge mistake, and I would value him much closer to like the mid-level or even a fraction of the mid-level. I would not want to pay that kind of money for a guy that can't create his own shot and can't really create open shots for others either. So for that reason, I think that Malik Beasley is one of the most overrated free agents in this upcoming class, behind one guy and one guy only, and I bet you could probably guess it. I am actually kind of a fan of this guy, and I think that he is a good NBA player, but the numbers people are talking about him getting this offseason are just outrageous to me. It's Jerami Grant, who was a wing for the Nuggets this past season. Grant is an impactful defender, but not the complete stopper that some people seem to be valuing him as. He is a floor spacer on the offensive end and can shoot the ball well, but really can't create his own shot or other shots for others at a high enough level that I would want to pay him in the range that people are saying. Like, I've heard people toss around like a 4-year, $55 million deal as a potential that Jerami Grant could get, and I don't see him as that kind of guy at all. I think that a value much closer to like 4 years, $32 million would be much more accurate. And quite honestly, I think that he maybe, well, he's going to get paid more than this, but I think a good value for him would be what his player option is, like $9.3 million. I think that Jerami Grant is very likely to get overpaid. And we could see, similar to like a Chandler Parsons or a Bismack Biyombo or a Nicholas Batum, that this could end up being one of the worst contracts in the league in a couple of years if someone gives him a 4-year, $60 million deal. I think it's going to be really tough for the Nuggets to bring him back, as I could really see a team like the Hawks or the Knicks overpaying for Jerami Grant. And if that happens, it would be really disappointing because he's a perfect fit alongside Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And for that reason, maybe if I'm the Nuggets, I would give him a higher deal, maybe like 4 years, $50 million instead of what I said before, 4 years, $30 million. But I just can't see them stretching it to the point where he's getting $15 million annually. And I think that would be a huge mistake for a team that's not even a contender like the Hawks or the Knicks. Those are my 8 most overrated free agents. To recap, at number 1 we have Jerami Grant, 2 Malik Beasley, 3 Serge Ibaka, 4 Aron Baynes, 5 Goran Dragic, 6 Tristan Thompson, 7 Bryn Forbes, and 8 Montrezl Harrell. Let me know in the comments section down below what you think about this list. In the end, Jerami Grant ended up at number 1 for me due to his poor on versus off the court impact for the Nuggets, his inability to create shots, and his horrendous rebounding numbers. However, I could understand if you think that he's worth the money that some people are valuing him at. So be sure to let me know in the comments what you think. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. That's it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.